I think this was asked to some extent, but if there's a crystal ball to predict where banks would be 10 years from now, is there a view? And that's probably first part of the question. And how technologies like blockchain can sort of accentuate that transition?
Who'd like to take that?
Look, I'll start and then we can go
you've
around.
got the mic, Theo.
Look, I think banks will become more, how do you call it, integrated into our lives, right? As I said, I don't think what we can see in terms of technology and where things are going as well, in terms of human interaction as well, it will become more part of your life. I think banks will definitely step up and actually start using social media or social data that's available and actually blend it with the transactional data. So I think things will become more intuitive, it will become more part of your life. And as I said, even if you look at things like the metaverse and augmented reality, those things are coming to light as we speak, right? A brain-human interface, where you can either use glasses or just put a device on your head, it actually interact directly with your interface. I think these are things coming, but it is just not the technology, is how it's going to make our life easier and improve life going forward. In terms of blockchain, it is a technology, it's got a place to use. Will it revolutionize everything? No, it will not, but it's got a place where it actually absolutely makes sense. But I think it's more customer engagement and how we interact is going to change the future of banking. That's just my personal view.
I maybe be slightly controversial. Banking is always going to exist. Banks may not. I think in terms of the ecosystem of banks that we have now and the numbers of banks, that will definitely shrink. Banking as a commodity will grow. The stronger banks will survive. There'll be more M&A. Banking will become a commoditized service that will be offered not just through banks but through lots of different organizations. It's not going to happen overnight. Banking is something that everybody needs, but if you ask a customer, do they need a bank? The answer is probably no. They need banking, but they don't necessarily need a bank. And I think that's where all of the banks need to realise. Eric talked earlier about harvesting data, understanding your customers. There are lots better organisations in the world that do that rather than banks. And so as banks wake up to that and how they provide those services, I think you will see a consolidation of banks and the number decreasing quite significantly over the next 10 to 20 years.
I tend to agree with that. I also think, and to Theo's point, it was about embedded banking. It'll be more about, whilst I'm doing the shopping, it'll be, you'll drop your bananas in the trolley, and it'll just scan you and pay. So you don't really think about going in to pay your bills. But I do think from retail banking, we'll still want a banking app. And I look at the other end of corporate C&I, there's still going to be a world for corporate institution to log in and do liquidity management and trade finance and all of that special. But in the middle, I think that's where the SME space is where it's going to be completely changed. No one will log into a bank if they're an SME. You log into your Xero, your MYOB, that's where you raise your invoices. You'll do all your banking through MYOB, and that's where you don't even know you've got a bank. Because through Xero or MYOB, I can move money from A to B. I don't need to deal with my bank. So I think it was quite interesting when ANZ were going to buy, and I had a chat with Dave about this. I thought that was one of the most inspired moves that a bank had made in a long time, and then 2 days later it was called off. But anyway, but I definitely see the SME space, banks, you go 5 years from now, no SMEs will log into the big banks to do the banking.
I had an observation. I spent a lot of time in Switzerland building banking systems. One of the key things, how the Swiss banks behave is they try to drive all the traditional transactions online, but they keep the branches for advisory services, right? And that is where they track your life cycle, right? In a sense, they see how you actually move from a typical retail customer to a high net worth customer, and they don't want to actually lose you as a high net worth customer by just, focusing on retail banking. So I think, and that's a trend we are also seeing in India. We are seeing branches, retail branches closing down, but we are seeing advisory branches opening up, right? So there is, most of the retail is moving online on the digital world. Most of the advice is actually more high touch, more branch oriented, right? So branch is actually not dead in a sense. At least we are not seeing that still. So there is a transformation of banking into wealth management in some sense, right? And that's one of the key things that from our perspective as well.
Excellent, thank you, and some great insights there into the future of banking. And I think on that note, that's a good way to wrap up the questions.